Enter your participant ID followed by pound. Otherwise, you have entered the meeting as a panelist. Attendees can now hear you speak.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the special open meeting of the Golden Rain Foundation of Laguna Woods. It's a California nonprofit mutual benefit corporation. The meeting is declared open at 1:31 on August 8, 2022. Do we have a quorum? I guess we do.
Can you turn up the microphone?
Let me acknowledge the media. I believe we're on TV6 today, and acknowledge the media. And I will entertain a motion for the approval of the agenda. So moved and second. Are there any objections? The agenda is approved. Today we have the final meeting of the business plan for the business to review the business plan prior to its formal adoption in the next meeting. This is where we get a chance to look at what is proposed to be the final copy of the GRF business plan. So with that said, we'll open the forum to speakers. You have 3 minutes to speak. We do not entertain a debate on these subjects. And so just make sure you have all your ducks lined up, and we'll hear from the speakers. Are there any online speakers? Fine. Thank you. Okay, is there anyone wishing to come to the podium to speak today? Okay. All right, with that said, we'll start with a review by Jose Campos, Director of Finance.
Perfect. Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to come and talk a little bit about the 2023 business plan. We're very excited to present this here to you today, and we have a presentation here that we'll be going over. You can bring that up, please. This is not the right one. The next one. Scroll all the way through to the end. Yep. After slide 73. After slide 73. 1 second here. Yeah. It's the same thing. Can you pull it for you? Sorry, we're having a couple of technical difficulties here. We'll be getting that on the screen momentarily. What we wanted to focus on is how far we've come during this whole process. Just to give you a representation, we began the 2023 business planning process in March, and altogether we have had a total, or there will be a total of 22 budget meetings, and I'm talking that these are 22 open session budget meetings where we've allowed everyone to come in and to take a look as far as what's going on with the budget. And this is quite an insurmountable task that we've been doing, of course, is we've really been going through and taking a really good look at the budget. And that's really important for us, of course, because we take the budget very seriously, because that's where a homeowner's assessments are derived from, is by being able to take a look at these budgets. And this is something that we began back in March with departmental budgets. And this is something that we have worked on internally, and it's something that we've worked on together with the boards on to be able to see. So we'll go ahead and show you here an idea of the calendar of what we've been looking at. And we've been taking an increasingly higher and higher approach. So we started way down deep in the woods as we were taking a look at specific projects in landscape and maintenance and those kinds of things. And to the point now where we're taking a look at the budget in its entirety. Here we go. Perfect, thank you. And again, so the good news is out of the 22 budget meetings that we've had, we are now on our 16th one. So it'll be this week's worth of meetings, and this is the culmination, the finality of what we come up with. And then at your September meetings, during your regularly scheduled board meetings, you'll be taking a look at adopting these budgets in their entirety. So again, this is number 16 of 22. But again, by way of letting you know how far we've come, I'd like to go over what we did before we even presented a single number to you. We had each of the department heads put in their budgets exactly what they needed to be able to give you the level of service that you're used to and that we're asking for. And as each department head put in their budgets, we then took the budgets and allocated it and crunched to make sure all the numbers were there, compared it to previous years. And then at that point, we got this whole budget together and put it before our CEO. And guess what she did with it? She took it and really took a harsher look at it. I will tell you that, for example, in the original budget that was presented by each of the department heads, there was a total of 11 staff increase. And of course, our CEO said, let's take a second look at that and let's re-review. As an example of one of the things that she did. In addition to that, once that was done, once the initial pass was done, the department heads went back to take a closer look and see what we can do to maintain the level of service and at the same time keep assessments down as low as possible. So each of the department heads, again, re-put in their budgets. They re-took a look at everything that was done. And then we conducted yet another review. And this time the CEO sat down with each of the department heads and really made sure that each of the items in there were well thought out and well planned out. And this is how we came to the original version 1 of the budget. And then as we've been going through each of these versions of the budgets with the boards, and even after the open session, oftentimes we'd get direction to let us know, hey, we need to change this assumption or we need to do this differently. And that's the way we were able to derive ultimately the ultimate budget. But again, just wanted to give you an idea. I know that these may just be a couple of slides or a couple of numbers on the screen. It's something that we've reviewed, re-reviewed, talked about, collaborated on, and done everything that we can to help the budget development process come through to fruition. But despite of everything that we've done internally, there have been a couple of external factors that we have to acknowledge. So we want to go over a couple of some key assumptions that we have here within the budget, and starting with utilities. Utilities have increased. We've seen the pain at the pump. We've seen all kinds of different things. Inflation has really hurt us. But as far as utilities are concerned, I'll give you a couple of examples. The electricity rate assumption for next year has increased by 10%. Water and sewer the sewer rates have increased by 49%. There's a lot of issues, or not issues, but the situations that are happening that may be outside of our control. The trash, as you know, we have a new trash provider that's being dictated upon us. So what is it that we do, or how do we combat these things? We've really taken an aggressive approach in our budgeting. We've taken, for example, a look at electricity and seeing that we're in a downward trajectory. We're using less and less electricity, and that is a combination of people being mindful of their electricity usage. Same goes with water and water consumption and those kinds of things. So there are a couple of external factors that are taking hold of us, but yet we are doing what we can. For example, in fuel, we are assuming a 15% increase last year to this year, and obviously it may be more than that. The reason that we're able to limit it at 15% is that we're doing everything that we can. For example, we're doing what we can to buy hybrid vehicles. Whenever there's a vehicle that needs to be replaced, we give first consideration to a hybrid or something that's going to consume less fuel. Additionally, in landscape, they are taking those handheld blowers and edgers and those kinds of things that were originally gasoline. And by the end of 2023, we're going to have replaced half of those with the electric version of those to comply with certain laws that are taking place. So we're doing what we can, again, to mitigate the fuel increases. Similarly, for programming costs are the network costs that are coming into us. We typically enter 3-year contracts for them, but there are some contracts that are up for renegotiation in 2023, so there is a factor included for that. Insurance is something that is we anticipate to go up between 10 and 15%, depending on whether it's D&O or hazard and liability. And that's being offset by the new strategy that GRF is taking by getting a quote for its own individual property insurance quote to be on their own. So that's some of the things that have helped keep that at a minimum. We also want to talk about the labor market, and it's tough for us to find good qualified employees, and we're not alone in this. This is something that's happening not only community-wide, but statewide and really nationwide. The labor market is difficult out there, so we're doing what we can to keep and retain good employees. And all this in the face of inflation. The latest inflation figures that I saw were at 9.1%. I'm going to go ahead and provide a spoiler alert and let you know that today's presentation will focus on a GRF assessment increase of $3.81, which is 1.8% compared to that 9.1% inflation. So there's, again, a lot of the reasons that we're able to do those things, but let me focus in on that wage increase, since that's going to be the majority of your increase here. For 2023, we have planned wage increase adjustments, as you see on your screen here, for non-union employees. That assumption is 5%, and for the union employees, that assumption is 2%. For union employees, we're entering the 5th year of a 5-year collective bargaining agreement, and that is what their contracted rate is, that 2%. As far as non-union employees, the way we were able to get there is by taking a look. We did a market comparison on the next slide here. We did a market comparison where we contracted with a company who this is what they do. They compare salaries from one industry to the next. And what's great about that is we were able to specify specific industries. So, for example, we compared ourselves against other not-for-profit. We were able to specify location, and of course, we specified an Orange County location. And we were also able to specify what size of company to compare ourselves against. So we compare ourselves against those companies, 500 employees or more. And we reviewed all full-time non-union positions, and something interesting happened. As we reviewed those, here you can see the results on your screen. We went position by position and comparing them against what one can reasonably find inside of the market. And we found that 69%, those first 2 rows there, were either under market or sometimes even well under market. So that means that only 31% of your employees here are at or above the market. So we really thought about that, thought long and hard. Well, what can we do in the face of a tough labor market? What can we do in the face of all these things that are taking hold upon us? And that's how we came up with that 5% figure. On this next slide here, you can see what inflation does, and maybe we can move that chart so we can see it a little bit clearer. Here's over the last 15 years what the budgeted wage adjustments have been and compared to the CPI. So I like this chart because it kind of tells a story. So anytime that the green, which would be the budgeted wage increases, are over the CPI, then that means that your employees' dollars are going further, that they're able to have more purchasing power, that they're able to do more with their funds. But anytime that orange line is over the green line, that means that your employees' purchasing power has actually decreased, and they're essentially are able to buy less with the funds. And so you see that there is definitely an influx there at some point where inflation really started outpacing. So what are we to do? Are we to all of a sudden say, hey, let's give everyone 9% raises. We didn't think that that was very fair either. So again, the assumption here for the 2023 budget is a 5% increase. Additionally, staff's going to see what can be done. We're trying to see different avenues. Perhaps we can save on employee-related insurance costs and those kinds of things to see if there's anything more that can be done for those individuals that are making well under budget. But we thought that that 5% was a good assumption for us to start with that. But again, the spoiler alert here is that for this version of the budget, there is a total increase from last year to this year of $3.81 or 1.8%. I will also draw your eye here on the chart on your screen as far as Grf Assessment History is concerned. This is a 10-year history, and you can see that compared to 10 years ago, the proposed budget for 2023 is actually a $2.50 decrease, and that's amazing if you really think about it. Now, I will say that there have been a lot of factors that have gone into this. Probably the biggest one would be that around the 2016 timeframe, GRF began collecting a transfer fee. And that transfer fee made it to where the contribution for reserves could be lowered. And so that was a big decrease there that you can see from 2015 to 16. But again, taking a step back from 2014 to 2023, there's actually a slight decrease year over year. So that's nice to see. As far as history is concerned also, wanted to show you this chart of FTE or full-time equivalents. And again, this is over the same 10-year period. You can see that overall there has been a decrease of about 25 staff. I will say, though, that this is strictly speaking headcount. It's not dollar, and I say that because there have been a couple of instances. For example, we outsourced our lifeguards. So even though we decreased the headcount because they're not officially your employees, the dollars are still reflected. We use an outside service for that. So really what I want you to gain from this chart is just a little nuance from 2022 to 2023. I will tell you that there has been a total increase from the current year to the proposed next year of an increase of 1.78 staff year. And this has to do with 2 customer service representative positions that have been added for the budget for next year. These are positions that have already been hired in. They were brought in specifically to help with the call center. And when we added them, we did see a lot of increased statistics. For example, we've had increased answer rates, we've had decreased hold times, and we've also had decreased abandon rate times. So again, as our CEO was taking a look and seeing what positions she would authorize, she thought that these 2 were very important. 1, because they were already filled, but 2, because of what they're doing is actually having a direct impact on the service that's provided and felt by the residents. So I thought that that was a pretty good addition. So that is the only staffing difference between 2022 and 2023. On this next slide here, you see talking a little bit more about full-time equivalents. For 2023, we are taking into consideration the fact that we're unable to fully hire up to where we want to be. So even though the authorized position is being increased by 1.78 here, you can see on the top of your chart from 734 to 735. The 2023 budget includes 735.97 FTE as authorized positions. However, only 711 of them are funded. What does that mean? That means that even though we're authorized to hire all these people to provide all these services, we recognize that there will be some timing differences between the time we can actually hire someone to the time that they're actually come on board, or there will be some times where there are vacancies. That means that you're able to save the assessment, so that the dollars aren't in your budget, so you're not being assessed for those positions and those transitionary periods. So again, you can see that on your screen. We're still in the process of recovering from COVID, and so we haven't had really the full look at how we're going to be looking as far as staffing is concerned. So in 2023, we're going to take a really close look and do a full evaluation as far as if there are still any vacant positions and whether they're truly needed, whether they truly need to be authorized going forward. But this is a change that hadn't been done for previous years, and this is a good way whereby we were able to keep your increase in GRF to a really minimal amount. So again, despite all the changes and all the checking and rechecking and asking department heads to go back and forth on the budgets, in the column on the left here, the version 1, for version 1, we presented a budget wherein the GRF assessment was going to be $231.49. Since then, again, we've had a lot of meetings with the boards, and we've gotten a lot of direction from boards. We've come up with a couple of different suggestions and ideas, and ultimately, that amount was reduced from the original amounts by over $10. So this is a chart that I normally have in here to show you the differences between the current version and the last version. But I thought it would just be illustrative to show you the difference of where we landed versus where we started. The board has certainly done a lot of work here to reduce it $10.18. But on this next slide, here's what you really want to see. And again, I've let the cat out of the bag a little bit and let you know that the proposed 2023 budget is $221.31 there on the bottom of your screen, an increase of $3.81 or 1.8% in the face of inflation. And if we can go back one just for a second. And so this is what your budget is comprised of, and we'll be going over each of these individually. We'll just take a couple minutes through each of them, but again, ultimately the increase is $3.81. So let's start by reviewing revenue. So we have a little pie chart here that shows us where your revenue is. Altogether, you have $10.4 million of revenue that's budgeted for GRF and where it all lies. So this is it pictorially. I'm more of a charts person, so I'll show you here on this next one. Here's the same $10.4 million number. Just want to let you see the difference between 2022 and 2023, and we'll go over and provide a couple of brief statements on these. Beginning with broadband services. Again, we're going to talk about them in order of magnitude. So this is the most revenue that's received by GRF comes from broadband services. For 2023, we are expecting to see slightly less revenue, and that has to do with less advertising that is going to be taking place. GRF gets a lot of their advertising from what you see on TV, and a lot of that advertisement comes from elections, and 2023 is a non-election year, so we won't be getting the benefit of getting those advertising dollars from that. Additionally, there's less revenue anticipated from equipment rentals, meaning your set-top boxes and premium channels. And what we've seen is that there's been a greater shift towards streaming those types of services. So instead of paying GRF to provide any of the premium channels that you can think of, people are just going directly to the source and streaming them on their mobile devices and those kinds of things. So you are going to see a little bit less revenue there. However, let's talk about some of the good things here. Golf operations, we saw that since the reopening after COVID, people have really gone out and really used the golf courses to their maximum. So we see a lot more usage, leading to $166,000 of higher projected revenue. Also, an interesting thing happened. We saw that during the COVID, we were asking people to rent individual carts instead of buddy up in them, and people have continued that practice. So that has led to a little bit of additional revenue as well. Under this miscellaneous category, and I hate to have a category be that big, the majority of this year is due to increased flow of traffic. We saw that once the pandemic let out, more people were getting out on those streets. Well, with more people getting out on their streets, it meant more people running those stop signs. We're assuming that there would be more traffic enforcement needed, leading to additional revenue having to do with traffic stops there. Additionally, we have a couple of new classes, recreation type classes, particularly in equestrian, and we're looking at every possible source of revenue that we can. As an example, one of the areas that we looked at was the RV storage. Not that we have any more RV storage lots or parking spaces that we can rent, but we noticed that we were using some of those lots to store and house vehicles that were going to be sold for auction. And we thought about it, that's not the best use of GRF facilities. So we're parking those now in parking lots and giving you more space to free up to be able to rent out those lots. Anyway, we're taking a look at that, and we do project $100,000 of extra revenue amongst all those items. We see additional revenue in the clubhouse rentals, additional revenue of $45,000 due to, we're assuming that everything's going to resume, hopefully, to some sort of new normal as we continue to progress and recover from this pandemic. A total of $45,000 extra are assumed there. And for merchandise sales, the $141,000 that you see here is to reflect increased sales of golf clubs. Again, the golf is getting a lot of use, and we're selling a lot more clubs. And also, we are providing fuel to a local company, Agewell. We are managing their fuel for them. We are providing them fuel at cost, so we show both the sales portion and the cost of goods sold on the expense side. But altogether, that is to say that we do project $189,000 more revenue in 2023 than we had in 2022, and that, of course, helps your assessment. So moving on to expenses, altogether there are $43 million of expenses. The majority, of course, being in compensation, as yours is a service organization that we have here. And again, here's the pictorial format. I used a couple of slides here to show you the same information via a chart. And again, just taking them from the order of magnitude here, compensation, the big increase here of $1,059,000. As we just discussed a second ago, the majority of that is going to be associated with wage increases, the planned wage increases. But in addition to that, there's also increases anticipated for medical, both union and non-union. We do have the extra dollars for those couple extra positions that we talked about as well. And there's an offset here by that vacancy that we kept talking about, the positions that are going to be authorized but not funded. So altogether, compensation ends at $1,059,000 increase there. And cable programming, we also talked about those contractually agreed upon rate increases that are happening. It's typically those have a 3-year life on those contracts, and we do anticipate a couple of them to be up for renewal in 2023, and that represents the $88,000 that you see there. Insurance, again, as we spoke about, there have increased hazard and liability and D&O liability premiums that are expected at the October 1st renewal. And that's going to be offset by a restructured GRF-only plan where there won't be any sharing with any mutual. Outside services, we anticipate that this is going to decrease, and this has to do with less vehicles. We're working really hard to make sure that we have a right number of vehicles available for our staff, and that is going to mean a decrease of vehicles. And with the decrease of vehicles, it of course means a decrease of vehicle painting and repairs and those kinds of things. So that's why you see a decrease under this particular line. Utilities, we've talked a little bit about already. Altogether, the grand total was $183,000. The biggest changes for GRF were natural gas. And natural gas is a commodity that fluctuates enormously month to month, actually. And they just basically, the company buys it wherever it can. The gas company buys it wherever it can and then forwards it to us at those costs plus a transportation cost that they charge. The transportation cost isn't changing, but they're anticipating that amount is going to increase quite a bit. And also they did a different thing with sewer. They were taking a look at their sewer rates. Altora Water District just met last week to review their rates. And the sewer rates were decreased substantially for the mutual, so I'll have some good news for you towards the end of the week. But for GRF, for the commercial accounts as they're called, the sewer rates increased. So you did see quite a big increase there for sewer. But again, altogether, utilities held at about $183,000 increase. And again, we're doing what we can to mitigate the demand, meaning we're trying to save and conserve energy and resources wherever we can. The last two items here under your expenditures are materials and supplies, where there's just a small increase. The small increase is due to replenishing some materials, ID cards specifically here in the community center, which were unbudgeted in 2022. In 2022, we assumed that we were going to use up all of our stockpile. We have, and we were going to need to replace those in 2023, and that's why you see the increase there. And these other operating account, and this is due to the increase in fuel sales that we were talking about. and also some higher expense for training and education for employees, as well as some DMV permit fees and those types of goods. So again, altogether, the increase here for expenses was $1.8 million, the majority of which was going to come from employee compensation. The next portion of your budget is this GRF Surplus Recovery. And this is an item that we included for the first time in a while in 2022. You see that $1.2 million addition, it decreased your assessments for 2022. And this is a give back, if you will, of the 2020 surplus. So we had a 2020 surplus and we gave it back in the form of decreased assessments for 2022. As we project, sorry, that was the 2021 surplus. I'm getting myself mixed up. Sorry, it is a 2020 surplus. So we're taking a look at your projections for today, and we looked and we project that GRF will end the current year at a $1.5 million operating surplus, and we suggest that you apply that towards next year's assessment. And so we're going to decrease the assessment for 2023 by an amount of $1.5 million or $10 per manor per month, compared to the $8 per manor per month that was last year. Your overall assessment will decrease by $2 compared to last year. The point being here that we did, for the last several years, we've run some pretty substantial operating surpluses. For 2023, I will tell you, we're budgeting very, very aggressively. We don't anticipate any surplus in 2023. We're budgeting, we've cut down to the bone. There is no fluff or contingency or anything like that. We believe that we're going to be able to come in on budget, but I don't expect any operating surplus going forward. But that being said, we will use the operating surplus that's there to decrease the budget for next year. So you do see a benefit there of a couple of dollars per manor per month. And the last portion here of your assessment are reserve contributions and your contributions for Contingency Fund. So we'll take those one at a time here. The good news is that for reserve contributions, so you just had your reserve specialist give a presentation at your last board meeting. I will just sum it up for you by saying that GRF had, for the first time, a contracted reserve study by a reserve specialist that came out and did a lot of in-field work. They brought in people from across the country to come in. For example, there were some folks from Florida that came in to assess our golf courses to make sure that we were reserving properly for them, that they're being properly maintained, that everything was where it should be. And in the words of the reserve specialist, at every turn, he was happily surprised. That was very exciting to see. As they did their reserve calculations, you see on your screen here, they determined us to be a combined of 52% funded, and I'll give everyone a reminder. They have a little scale that is used in the industry. They're saying that anywhere from 0 to 30% funded, it puts you at risk for a special assessment. Between 30 and 70 at a low risk, and anything over that is at a low risk. So the reserve specialist was very excited to see where we were as far as those are concerned. As far as having reserves on hand are concerned, I was very excited to see that the recommendations that the reserve specialist made as far as contributions were concerned were going to continue to be covered by the $17 per manor per month assessment that has been previously assumed. So here, I didn't bother doing all 30 years. The further out that you look, the less and less certain. They still look good, but it's just a projection. Projecting something more than 5 years out is a little difficult. But I did want to show you the next 5 years here, and I will draw your eye to the little green box there and show you that for the next several years, we don't anticipate your contribution changing. And also the transfer fee right next to it, we don't anticipate that changing over the next several years. And yet we're still able to not only maintain, but actually increase your funding balance, as you can see over on the right-hand side. So very encouraging, I think. It's very encouraging to see that even with no assessment increase, because of the transfer fee, you're able to continue to not only maintain, but increase your funds there. So that was exciting to see. So bottom line here is that we don't anticipate any changes. We don't recommend any changes to the contribution for your reserve fund. And then the next item of business, or the last one I should say, is your contribution to the contingency fund. The contingency fund is currently today a contribution of $5 per manor per month. So what we did is we took a look back at seeing where your balances for this particular fund have been. And as you can see on your screen, they've for the most part been under about $1 million. In 2021, they ended up just over $2 million. We project that by the end of the current year, you will be at $3.1 million. We've also looked back and saw that our average spending out of this particular fund is about $250,000 per year. So even with no contribution in 2023, we still believe that you'll end the year at about $2.9 million. And again, as you look at your screen, seeing as how this is truly a contingency fund, this is not a required fund, this is a nice to have. We thought that it would be prudent to suspend the contributions for 1 year and to see where we are next year. But even so, we believe that this fund will end at about $2.9 million by the end of 2023. So I thought that that was a prudent thing to do. So once we wrap up all those changes, again, I'm showing you this as I showed in an earlier slide. The total 2023 GRF assessment would be $221.31, or an increase of $3.81, which is 1.8% increase compared to the current year. And that again leaves you with good reserves. It leaves you with it's altogether a very good plan. It's been a lot of hard work, and your boards have worked closely with staff, not only in all the meetings that we mentioned thus far, but also in a lot of going back and forth with emails and requests and checks, checking that, verifying that amounts were in there. So we're very happy to present this budget to you. And that is the conclusion of our presentation today. And we'll be glad to entertain any questions.
Great presentation. Thank you. Thank you. Lots of hard work from the team. Lots of hard work from the team. I do have a couple of questions. Through COVID and the reduction of employees or available employees, what have we learned about the possible efficiencies that we can maintain as a result of that?
We've identified efficiencies, but with this labor market and people coming and going, we just haven't been able to solidify the employee base to make concrete recommendations at this point. Again, that's why we introduced the vacancy factor, the risk factor for next year, to allow us hopefully time to analyze once we're hoping the employment market stabilizes a bit and we know what we're able to retain and go from there.
I'll open it up for any more questions or comments. Oh, okay. Richard Rader, well, tell me who's first. Who had their hand up first? Okay. Mm-hmm.
Okay, the $3.81 per manor per month translates to about $500,000 a year that we need to raise, correct? All right, by looking at all the opportunities, what are the areas that we can look a little bit deeper, either to raise or cut, or revenue or cost? Do we have any other areas that we can increase revenue or reduce the cost in order to at least stay flat coming out of the COVID?
Again, this is something that we looked at and re-looked at, and I showed you where we started. We thought we were as close as we possibly could. One of the areas that we looked at, of course, was these vacancy factors. I thought that made a really big impact on you. We also took a look at the need for a contingency fund, which we've already completely removed the contributions to. I think that this is as low as we can go. It's not for lack of trying. We're considering looking at all kinds of different places, but we believe that this is the best that can be provided.
Okay, and
If I may, in addition to the expense cuts, so when we were going through the individual presentations from the department heads, we worked from a revenue perspective as well. So we looked at historically where the revenues were, and we applied a little bit of a stretch in order to reach some of those goals.
yeah, cutting is a little bit more difficult. Raising might not be as difficult, but is equally probably difficult to raise more income because of inflation and everything. All the costs gone up. Why we cannot look at increasing our revenue for the service, some of the services that we provide in order to maintain people, because inflation is there, everyone understands. Why we have to absorb that rather than making sure everyone pays their fair share so we can stay a little bit flat.
Sure, and if I may, so we're also evaluating those as well, but in terms of the budget for 2023, we thought it was important to work with what we have currently and evaluate the potential increases as a separate line item. So we don't want to commingle the two conversations.
So we are still
That
open
we are
to
evaluating.
That effort is currently underway, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I turned in the card, she has it. Okay, annual $100, you're up 917D.
Is your Microsoft, is your microphone on?
We're turning it up. Here we go.
Pardon? Okay. Could you put up that chart that showed the surplus that's being applied? That's not it. That one right there, yeah. At the meeting held a month ago, I pointed this out, but I'll do it again. The figure of $1,223,000 for 2022, that wasn't really considered until I brought it up at the meeting last year. And then they recognized that, yes, that should be applied. And that surplus was a surplus based on the operation for 2020. At last month's meeting, I brought up the fact that the figure for 2023 of $1.5 million is an estimate based on the savings for the current year that we're in. So the year of 2021 is being bypassed. That creates two problems. One, last year, according to the audited financial statements, there was a 2.7 surplus generated from operations. Yes, it was. Look at the financial statements. It'll show you that. I've got it right here, the audited financial statements. Okay? So that is substantially more than the $1.5 million. So not only are you making a mistake by bypassing it, but also the source for this credit is incorrect. If you do this, then you're losing that credit that should be applied next year for 2024 if this amount is generated this year. Another thing I want to point out is that if you look at the audited financial statements, you will see that the bond and other financial investments of about $29 million include $5.7 million of operating funds. Those are funds that were generated from surpluses created because of COVID-19, from lack of services and not being able to use amenities for those 2 years of 20 and 21. So it's verified right there that substantial monies have been saved, and yet we as members have not gotten those surpluses applied as credits. So this might sound a little strong, but if these aren't corrected, I am questioning the honesty of this information, because you can verify this by looking at the various reports that I've referred you to. And at the last meeting where I brought this up, I recall that Jim Hopkins acknowledged what I was saying, and I got the impression this would be corrected. So I've got two main questions. One, why wasn't it corrected for this meeting? And when is it going to be corrected? So I'd like to have answers to both of those. And again, I have the audited financial statements here that I can show you those numbers that I generated, okay? According to this audit financial statement, it says net income, GRF, 2021, $2.7 million. Also, if you look at the notes of financial statements on the investments, you will see out of $29 million of investments, $5.7 million is from operations. The other $23 million and several $100,000 is from reserve. So this needs to be corrected. So I want some answers, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Armendariz. I can assure you that the numbers that presented are correct. But I will validate the number that you provided. If you go back and look at the 2021 audited financial statements, you're absolutely correct. The total income that was brought in for 2021 was $2,754,000, of which $974,000 was specific to operating. It's only the operating portion that is moved into the contingency fund. Everything else, the difference between the $974 and the $2.8 million, is left in the reserve fund, and those are left in the reserve fund to fund future projects. So repeating myself, 974 came from operating from 2021. So while you see on the screen here, we budgeted for 2022 $1,223,000. The actuals, and again, that was, although it says the 2022 plan, this is referencing the 2021 operating surplus. And again, that operating surplus was $947,000. So that amount is being moved to, it's being brought before the Finance Committee and the board later this month. So, and that is going to be used to offset future, the operating plan.
Why don't you add that to the $1.5 million?
So thank you, but it's part of the $1.2 million that's presented on screen. So what we're forecasting for 2022 from an operating surplus is the $1,528,000. So that's the amount that is going to be used for 2023. So I acknowledge the questions that you brought the last month and asking for corrections to be made, but the numbers that were presented were correct last month and they are presented correctly here.
I don't quite agree because the $1.2 million that you got there for the prior year, that was all based on 2020, nothing else.
Incorrect, I'm sorry. So in 2020...
I remember being at the meetings. I remember, because the actual surplus was much larger than that.
In 2020, you had a $440,000 operating surplus. I would agree when you look at the audited financial statements, you're looking at in total, both operating and reserve. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but you had about $440,000 operating surplus. In 2021, it was $947,000. And all that is reflected correctly on this screen.
It doesn't state that in the line that describes how that amount is derived.
Gotcha. It was forecasted, but we didn't know what the real numbers were.
One's actual and the other's a forecast.
Correct. So in
it's a combination of the two. You don't say that. I'd like to have you provide me with this information that you're stating so I can verify it.
Sure.
Because
absolutely.
it's not obviously anywhere that any documents I've seen.
Correct. So,
and if I have seen them, I doubt the board has seen them.
Correct. So the $947,000 is going to be presented to the Finance Committee this month. So and that's going to show, and I can...
Oh, okay. Since I brought it up, now you're going to present it.
No. This is standard practice. Every year after the audit is completed, we discuss out the numbers, we calculate it out, and we determine the operating surplus. This is consistent with each of the
The audit was completed in April.
Sure, but regardless.
Thank you.
Okay, can I have this information, Jim? I read.
No, I understand.
Because I have a lot of questions.
No, I do understand, and I think it's something that can be put on a piece of paper, because it's the numbers. It's the reconciliation of the numbers is what you're saying.
Right. I want to make sure nothing gets overlooked.
Right.
And time passes.
And I think to your point, I think we should be able to show you that it has not been overlooked by just putting the numbers on a piece of paper and coming to a mutual agreement.
Yeah.
Right?
Because these reports don't say what he said.
No, I understand. I understand what he said, and I understand what you said, and there is a gap there in understanding. I'm not sure there's a gap in the reality, but there's a gap in the understanding.
Right, and providing the information. The gap in providing the information and in understanding.
Exactly.
Because without the information, you can't understand.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Take care of it.
Great. Thanks, Manny.
My name is Buckley. 4008 Ali Sonora.
I'm sorry, we have someone online that-
Oh, I'm sorry.
ahead of you.
Yeah, we have somebody before you.
You have someone before me?
We have three online here.
We have,
Okay, I didn't put my
Yes.
name.
We'll get to you in just a second.
we have Azar first.
Okay, Azar?
Thank you so much. I have three questions. The first two is just yes and no. If you quickly answer, I can ask all of them. You mentioned in one of the slides, I forgot the name of the slide, the number, 1/3 of the full-time staff, non-union, they were, actually that's the whole survey. What the first question, was officer and top management were included in that survey or not?
No, they were not.
Okay, they were not. So in that case, all of those people, you get a survey, 1/3 of them, thank you so much, 1/3 of them is above the market.
It's at or above the market.
Yes, it's above market. Now my question is that 5% that you are increasing, this 1/3 included that 5% or not? Because they are already above the market. Should they get 5% above the market?
Again, those are at or above the market. And yes, the 5% is a salary pool. So we take a look. It's not an automatic thing. It's, of course, based on performance reviews and making sure that everyone is fulfilling their end of the bargain and being good employees. But yes, everyone will qualify up to 5%.
Well, I am not agree if they are under market and well under market that you give 5%, and then those above market gave 5%. This is a little bit off. So anyway, I am not agree with those people getting 5% if they are above. Another question is there any strategy that these people that above market 1/3 can kind of be at the market and then give it the money to the well under market? Is there any strategy in CMS?
The short answer is no.
Thank you. Just a no. Thank you. That's all I needed. And then the last one, I see that utility, you took it 183,000 up. I understand that we are going to deduct the use of the water. That's started. It's already passed as a resolution and coming. Because they said about 15% is going down. Is it that that can offset that 133,000 and not be here extra for the next year? Because the usage goes down. Did you consider that one?
The majority of the GRF water is comprised of reclaimed water that's used on the golf courses, and I don't believe that there has been any regulations as far as that is concerned. I may be wrong on that. As I'm looking at water, the total water increase for GRF was 15 cents per man per month. Obviously, we want every penny, but there are not a lot of big dollars here as far as GRF and water are concerned.
Remember, 50% times by the 12,000 units. You are talking every month and times by 12 every year. So if we are deducting the usage, I would love to see that the deduction on the price as well. And the last one is the one that following with what Manny said. You mentioned you will bring the extra to the next finance meeting for use of future operating. Why you are not counting that one in the budget right now and deduct it from budget?
The question is, what's going to happen with the operating surplus that we're going to be discussing at the next meeting? The suggestion is to include that into the contingency fund, and the contingency fund is going to be increased by that amount. And I will remind you that is the majority of the reason that we aren't able to go without a contingency fund contribution is because you're taking these funds, the operating surplus from last year, and putting it into the contingency fund for that very reason.
But the reason is contingency right now is above the threshold. So it's not something that even we are not adding, we are really, really nothing. So why you are not adding this one to the really budget, even with the number that you said 975,000. Why we are not using right now at the budget of 2023 rather than bringing for the future project. Whatever project comes, we can adjust it and then put it. I am in favor of this B in the added in the budget, and a little bit goes down. Because of that $10 per month that you mentioned, right away $6 was contingency that we deducted and not putting, and $2 was I forgot that one. But anyway, it's not something that every single department just saving. So it's a surplus at $2. $8 of $10 that you mentioned, that you keep saying that is deducting, is just for these two things. I wanted to see this 975,000 goes to the budget if it is possible, and bringing to the finance, and before its final vote goes to that one. Thank you so much.
So if I may, to answer the question as to why, we recommend that money be put into the contingency fund again, because it provides you immediate relief in that you're not able, we're recommending that you don't make any contribution in 2023. And we also believe that it's a better place to put it in the contingency fund rather than to the operating surplus, because then automatically next year, if there is no operating surplus, your assessment will automatically increase next year without any changes. Whereas if we put it in the contingency fund, there's no automatic increase for you next year. So those are the reasons for our recommendation.
Well, I believe we are above the threshold. We already have about $2 million. So contingency has enough for unexpected things. It's not something this 975,000 can really make a big difference. And right now we needed the budget for 2023. With all of the inflation that's going up and 5% the salary goes up, we need that goes to that one to bring a little bit down. That's at least my suggestion. I highly recommend that you use that one. Thank you so much.
Okay. Who do we have next?
Yeah.
Richard Rader?
Okay. Richard Rader?
Yes, thank you. You mentioned that we supply fuel at cost to Agewell. My question is, are we supplying all of their fuel needs throughout all of Orange County, or just the fuel that they use in the village?
Currently, it's on a limited basis. And again, we do supply it at cost, but we do charge them an administration fee. So GRF does get a taste. They do get some benefit for providing this service to them.
Is the amount that you're getting as an administrative fee at least, let's say, $1, or let's say 50 cents for each gallon? In other words, are you getting a fair return? Because I think that you're doing a service for them, but I think we should at least make a profit of at least 50 cents a gallon.
It's a set amount. It's not a per gallon basis.
But do you know how many gallons that they're using if we're making at least 50 cents? You may not have the answer now, but I'm just arguing that I think that we're doing a great service for them, and that they should at least give us something equivalent to 50 cents a gallon, whether it's through administrative fee or per gallon.
I will look that up and get back to you.
Okay, next we have
Kush Bada.
Kush Bada.
Thank you. You were talking about the water and sewer and basically utilities. And we in the third got a letter or some notification that overall the rate is down because the sewer fees were lower than the sewer fees had gone down. So overall, the 15% that we not 15%, whatever the increase was in the water, if we factor in the sewer fees, it is lower than normal. So have you had the same experience, or have you got the same information?
Yes, absolutely. We were very excited to see the sewer rates come out when El Toro Water District took a look at taking a look at all of their rates. They had revised sewer rates, and as I mentioned, the domestic use for the sewer rates all went down. However, GRF is considered commercial, and the commercial rates for sewer actually went up. So I'm happy to take that trade because in the mutuals, it ended up being a savings of about $400,000, but it did lead to a GRF increase of about 40. Hate to see any increase, but if we have to take that trade, that's a good one to take.
Good. Just thought I'd ask. Thank you.
Next, is this Egon?
Yes, I had a question on capital expenditures. I believe it's slide 19.
I don't think we've gone over that yet.
No, it was slide 19.
Oh,
We've got.
okay,
we've
go ahead.
passed that.
Yes, I got you.
Okay. No, the one that had the total. I'm sorry, maybe I got the wrong number.
Come on.
But the one that had the 2022 capital expenditures.
22.
No, go to 20 then. I'm trying to figure out where we are. That one right there. That $8 million expenditures, that's capital, right? Do you have a breakout of the projects that comprise that number?
Yeah, this is something that the reserve specialists put together, and there are about 500 pages or so that will be made available to all the directors for the full capital, for the full reserve study here. But yeah, there's a lot that goes into that. Not only is it ongoing, it's not only is it 2023 projects, but it's also takes into consideration a lot of the funded but not yet done previous projects as well.
So this projection.
So that's not really $8 million that we spent this year.
Correct.
Or are going to spend.
It's a projection.
So at some point, can we get a highlight of just the biggies that make that number up? Not today, not anytime soon. Just at some point.
Sure.
Yeah, keep in mind this is a planning exercise, and so he's got to include all of the, not only those that are on the table, but those that are projected to be spent, whether we spent the money or not so far. So that was the purpose of that.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
She was on, but it looks like she lowered her hand.
Okay.
But I have two speakers here. First, we have Drew Buckley.
Drew Buckley, 4008 Cali, Sonora. The two subjects I heard at your meeting was follow. One, inflation, and the second, the short people. You're projecting that to the future. In that aspect, I don't think you're looking at technology. I make you an example. Our gate attendants, I estimate, cost somewhere between $1.7 and $1,550 million a year. The two different numbers, one is at a $1,550, which is being paid today. The other one was at $17. I added workman's comp and some overhead. If we look at our gates and come to a gate after 11 o'clock, I'll be lucky if most gates get more than 3 or 4 people between 11 and 5. I think the board should be looking of installing flat screen televisions, a 32-inch. I don't know what a monitor costs by use of flat screen. It's about $100. You put a printer and a cover in there, that's about $100. You take a camera, connect it to where the car is, that should cost $100. And you connect it all together using the FICA or VOISP for it. Now you say, well, I'm going to still have to hire someone. Again, I think you're inside the box and not looking. There's a company called JetBlue, quite large company. I mean, they work, their home services for customers is housed out of Utah. So if you call for a flight with JetBlue, you are calling people at home in Utah. The average wage, or the minimum wage in the state of Utah, is $7.52. So let's just say we use it at $10. That would cost you about $300,000. My math, fast math, says we're making about $1.2 million savings. And that's just for one gate. Now, the way you want to look at this is to do it in increments. Don't frighten your people. But all those gate attendants can then move over to the jobs that you're short of. For example, half the clubhouses haven't got people after 5. You have ad in every one of the elevators I'm in that you're constantly adding for people. So I asked the boards to start looking outside the box and start using technology. Now, I'll give you an example of this. This is the second time that I wrote up this subject. The first one was written in January to the president of GRF. Madam Chairman, your predecessor, and the president of EMF. I got 0 response from anybody. On $1.5 million savings, I thought that was poor management. I would like someone to look into that. James Buckley, you got my telephone number. Think outside the box. You're in high inflation, it's not coming down, and you're going to have labor shortages. Start thinking other ways. I'll answer any question. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mary Wall.
Yeah, Mary Wall 239D. Good afternoon, everybody. Why do we pay bank fees? You know, we should go to a bank that doesn't have all these fees. We're a good customer, and I'd like to know why we have such high bank fees. Any answer?
Sure. So, if I may, the bank fees that you're being paid for are your lockbox fees. That's the largest amount of money that you're being paid. So rather than having some of these services being performed in-house, the bank is handling your cashing of those checks at a much smaller dollar amount than what could be handled in-house. That's the primary focus of your cost. Probably about 2/3 of the cost is lockboxes.
And I see it's going down 10,000, 14%. So I guess you found something to save on. Staff support. Now, years ago, we had staff support here, which was about, and it went down and down and down. Could you tell me what staff support is now, please?
Sure. Staff support is what is used to little perks, if you will, to make life a little bit easier for employees. It's what we use for our end of the year celebration. It's what we use for our recognition of excellence. It's what we use for years of service, anniversaries. For example, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years of service. We do a little lunch for those employees that have reached at least 10 or 15 years. Not on their every 5th year of their anniversary. So that's what we use our staff support. We want to make sure that we are providing a great place to work, and it's a little bit of funds that go a long way to make it a little bit better for your employees.
Do we ever know who's getting this staff support?
Yes, those are open to the public. The board members have attended many of those functions, and yeah, we try to make it a big deal. We try to celebrate the wins and celebrate excellences. So yeah, something that we do very publicly.
And that includes gift cards?
That has included gift cards in the past, yes. There have been $25 and $50 gift cards that have been issued in the past, I believe.
Okay, thank you. And cable promotions, I don't understand that. What are cable promotions?
Sure. One of the perks that resident employees get is that they were able to have their cable for free. So some of the premium channels, and that is where we registered that under cable promotions. So resident employees.
Resident employees, thank you.
I'm Lenny Ross from United 687C. Couple things. One of the things is I want to thank VMS for doing a great job. I think it's a fantastic effort on their part. And now that we're on version 3, one of my questions is, if we see changes to this budget at this point, are we still able to make changes to the budget before it's finalized in September? That's one question. And maybe you can answer that, and then I can go to my last question.
Yeah, the quick answer is yes, this is all part of the process. We're obviously getting to the final stages, but we do have a few questions to respond to, some of which may affect the budget.
Okay, so budget changes can still be made at this time, if needed. My last question is regarding the full-time equivalence of, and it's on chart number 10, which shows the actual full-time equivalents that are funded positions at 711.47. And my question is specifically, is the compensation that's planned for 2023 of $26,455,000, is that based on funded positions?
Yes.
Or authorized positions?
Funded.
It's funded positions. Okay. So it's based on 711.47. Okay.
Correct.
That's it. Thank you. Thank you very much.
There don't appear to be any more questions, Mr. Chair. Oh, looks like one more just came up.
Okay. All right. One question. Sorry, we had a chance. So one question.
Could you, Jim, you answer Director Ross. Can you bring that page again? Because you answered him. The page that we're talking right now for the full-time position.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
The page that, yes, here. You mentioned that the budget, if I understand correctly, Jim, I'm not sure I understand correctly. You said the budget is based on 511.47. Is it correct?
711.47, yes.
Sorry, 711.47. Is it correct?
That's correct.
But in the line says the 2023 budgeting includes 736 authorized position and this unfunded. So you are talking about that this 24.50 vacancy is not budgeted. Am I right or wrong?
You're correct.
That means it's not budgeted, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right, we've gone to item 7, open forum for speakers. We've reviewed the plan. Are there any director comments?
I just want to clear one up about the 5% increase. You know, all the organization, when they do annual, budgeting for the staff, they have the cost of living adjustment, whatever that is, 2%, and then they calculate how much, they have underpaid or overpaid or at, and then they bring that to the budget. And with that doesn't mean everyone gets 5%. the way it is, it works from 0 to 5%. Some people that are way over, in the business, we call it red circle, and they don't get any adjustment even on their cost of living. And some people that way under, they might get up to 5%. And it happens that if people are way underpaid, they might get, with the approval, over 5%. So the 5% doesn't mean that everyone get 5%. Let's be clear on that. I just want to make sure that everyone understands that people getting 0, that people might get 5 or 6% because of their, their salaries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more director comments? John?
Again, we'd just like to thank the staff for your fantastic job, helping us understand and make decisions that are appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ditto. Okay, so that concludes director comments. Okay, we'll open it back up for one person. See how special
Hi.
Sue is. Okay, Sue, you're on.
I just want to make sure I understood correctly that we did not go over the capital plan today, and is that going to be done in another meeting?
Yeah.
Was it?
The capital
Is
plan
that correct?
the capital plan was distributed. We reviewed it at the last version. There have been no changes from that.
Yeah, there've been no change. Yeah, there've been no changes to the.
I think there could be an error. I didn't catch it earlier, but I think there's something missing from the, it's attachment 6B equipment fund, and it shows the remaining encumbrances, and I think there's a project missing. Well, I cross-checked this against the project log that we go over in the M&C meetings, and there's a generator, a backup generator at the service center, and it will not get done this year, and so it seems like it ought to be encumbered for next year. Just wanted to point that out. Not a big deal.
Okay. Thank you. And just keep in mind that a capital allocation doesn't necessarily mean it will get spent in that given year. It's just allocated, and we acknowledge that that needs to be replaced or upgraded, or whatever it is. So it's not quite the same as the operating budget. But thank you.
What'd you say? It's not in the operating. It's in the capital plan. It wouldn't be in the operating budget.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
I just didn't.
Thank you.
I just didn't understand. Yeah, it's a capital item.
Right.
So I don't understand your comment.
Okay. Yeah, I was acknowledging that it was a capital plan item, and it's an allocation. Therefore, we're simply saying we're going to need to replace it, the equipment, and we may or may not get around to it that given year, but it's still allocated for the expenditure. In fact, what finance does every November or so is to go through all of the projects that have an allocation attached to them and help to determine whether or not they're still active, there's money left, and make adjustments to the funding accordingly. Well, let me thank everyone for attending. We do have a few things to follow up on, and I think we do. Mr. Almendarez I did mention that we would do a reconciliation for him so that we can assure not only him but ourselves as to how we're treating the operating surplus. Good. And so with that,
Bring the gavel down.
Bring the gavel down.
you.